Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar from Spec Innovations, an overview of requirements management and analysis using Innoslate. My name is Elizabeth Steiner, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Let's go over some quick housekeeping before we get started. During the presentation, feel free to send us questions, and we will get them answered at the end of the webinar. You can also interact with us on LinkedIn for the Innoslate user group or through Twitter using the handle @Innoslate. The webinar is being recorded, and we will make it available to you after the live presentation, so be sure to keep an eye out for it in your inbox. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our presenter, Dr. Steve Tam. He'll be sharing with you how to leverage the power of requirements management through Innoslate. Steve is the president and founder of Spec Innovations, as well as one of our training instructors. He has also been involved with research experiments, operations analysis, software development, systems engineering, and training for more than 40 years. Steve participated in the development of C4ISR Architecture Framework and DoD Architecture Framework. He has also received an Expert Systems Engineering Professional certification from INCOSE. He currently is applying systems engineering techniques to various DoD, DOE, and commercial projects. Feel free to send Steve any questions through the LinkedIn user group or send him an email. And now, I'll hand over the controls to Steve and we'll get started.
Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry?
I can hear you great, thank you.
Okay, yeah, because you've got a lot of background noise, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. Okay, so our agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about where do all good requirements come from and what does make a good requirement. And we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between requirements management and requirements analysis. A lot of people focus on the management side and forget the analytical side, which is equally important. And then, of course, talk a little bit about how Innoslate can make you a better requirements analyst and manager. And then we'll give you a live demonstration of the tool. We'll go through different aspects of the tool and capabilities. And hopefully we'll leave enough time for some good questions and answers. So where do requirements come from? Well, most customers will tell you, well, I want an iPhone that's bulletproof, literally. Yeah, right. They want to take it to the battlefield because they're used to using the iPhone at home, and so they want to take it to the battlefield. Well, of course, that's not going to happen. Apple's not going to support that, and to ruggedize an iPhone would probably cost as much as making a new one. So these are the fundamental things, the way we get things often, unfortunately. Of course, then we also get these wonderful documents, these policy documents and laws, which tell you to go to a certain chapter, enclosure, paragraph, and wherever to find the piece of information. And you get there and you see what's there and you go, that's not much of a requirement. It's not explicit. It doesn't tell me exactly what they really want, what form it looks like, nothing. So, and then of course, analysis. Sometimes you can take functional requirements and derive them from user stories. That's become a very popular way to do that. Another source is architectures. And they give you lots of these drawings, and you're supposed to say, well, okay, how do I convert that into a set of functional requirements I could do something with, or performance requirements? Often I can't. And then, of course, the modeling world is, well, here, I've got a SysML requirements diagram. It has everything you need. Probably not. So part of the problem is we don't know if any of these are any good. So if you go through and look what makes a good requirement, oftentimes the customer, again, in that first example, was over-specified. They say, well, give me a 3-engine plane. Well, that's not what they really need. What they really need is the ability to land one with the one engine, so you land with an engine failure. So what's sufficient? What's low enough risk that lets you do that? That's a better way to specify it. Again, you're trying not to specify the design with the requirement. Another example is here where you have the pot show have 2 handles. Well, that's great, but you can easily place the pot, right, in the wrong way. And so that the cute little picture here shows you that. And so same thing with the spigot. Shall be above the fill hole. Well, you want to be facing away from the handle. So these are, obvious, kind of funny examples. But we see examples of this every day where the lack of clarity is just missing from the requirement. So another thing that makes a good requirement is a set of relationships. In other words, making sure you can trace it through from the originating document into modeling elements, into the verification validation methods, that you're covering, what you need. Make sure that it gives you everything that you aren't over-engineering the problem as well. And of course, context. So traceability is very critical to having a good requirement. So if I can't trace the requirement back to its sources and to its actual functionality and things that other parts to create the specification level requirements, then I've failed in my job. So what makes a good requirement? Again, these are the ones we've come up with or ones we use in our tool. I would say that we didn't come up with these. This is a list I've had for years, and we just applied it. And so the tool itself will actually, in the items in green, we have a quality checker that does natural language parsing and looks at the information in the description field of the requirement, and it'll actually give you hints as to whether it thinks it's clear or complete or consistent and on that. So you can, of course, add to those if you want to, or even subtract from them. You can hide these, and you don't have to actually do all of them. So again, this is a way to get at getting to a good requirement. So what's the difference between requirements management and requirements analysis? Well, here's a couple of definitions pulled off of various sources. Again, the idea of management is I'm managing it. I'm controlling where it goes. I'm making sure I have the traceability. I'm keeping it under version control so that now, I know when I'm changing out new requirements, doing that. In the analysis part of it, though, I'm really looking to understand the requirement more, making sure it really meets those quality criteria we just mentioned. And very often it's not, and then we have to derive a requirement from that. What's the real requirement? What are they really trying to get to? And sometimes that takes an interaction with the customer. In fact, very frequently it takes an interaction with the customer to make sure you have it right. And so that's a little bit more difficult job. It's not just an analysis of words, it's also kind of understanding the people and the context and the environment they're all in. So, okay, so some examples of risk management, requirements management versus requirements analysis. So, for example, in risk, I keep saying risk management, I mean requirements management. Requirements management, baselining is a common thing you do, and you do that to establish a common base between the stakeholders. So everybody knows how, what is the set, the current set of the correct set of requirements. Also, control and manage the scope. Try to keep from requirements creep happening. Of course, we often don't call it requirements creep. It's closer to requirements gallop. It moves very fast in some environments, and it's very difficult to keep under control. Of course, by tracking that requirement changes through the design process, one of the things that happens is you think you've created this great requirement, and you pass it down to designers, and they look at it and say, well, yeah, I can do that, but my gosh, it's going to cost you X. And if you change the requirement slightly, it's going to cost a lot less. And so those are kinds of things that are helpful and to track and trace through the process. And you can't say, well, gee, yes, you can change that requirement without understanding the impact it has on other requirements. So if I don't have that traceability, I wouldn't have a chance to be able to resolve that in a positive way. Just have to tell them, hey, yeah, I've got to spend the money. And of course, creating baselines for milestone goals. So each milestone, particularly if you do the DoD 5000 process, you'll see that they're very structured milestones and where you're trying to get to for each of these baselines. In requirements analysis, we do more things like quality and risk checking. So again, does it meet the quality criteria that we expressed? And how can I change it to meet the criteria so it can be adjusted? Adding a rationale for the requirement, that's often something that people consider good practice. And we enable with an attribute as a rationale attribute also within the tool. And then, of course, does this requirement pose a risk or create an issue? So do I need to go off and derive a risk associated with this that then can be resolved later on and mitigated? So one of the things is, I'm guessing most of you are doing both of these now. The question is, does your tool really support both? So one of the things that we think Innoslate lets you be, makes you a better requirements analyst and manager, it helps you with all these things. And by the way, these are just the key features in the tool, not all of them. We don't have enough time in an hour probably to go through all the features that the tool has that are available for you. So we're just going to hit the key ones for requirements management and requirements analysis. But so we have a requirements view, which I'll show you very quickly, and within it you can do baselining of the documents. There's something called branching and forking. That lets you spin off pieces to see if you want to work more, or you can take and create a specific instance of it in its own project. Say I'm taking a new document and I want to parse it and I want to work with it and make sure I have it right before I merge it into a master database. This will let you do that. And then history, of course, is the version control, tracking the history of the changes in the requirement. Our quality checker that's built in, I'll show you that. Import analyzer, that's probably where most people are going to start, because that's where you're trying to understand how to bring the document into the tool. Most of us don't start from zero, so we start from something we work with. There's a schema editor to let you extend the schema, so you're not constrained to what we've come up with. You can add to it. You can, again, subtract it from it by hiding attributes as well. We have a function called intelligence now. This is a new capability that has a set of heuristics that goes through reading the information in the database and seeing how good a job we're doing. So there's a specific section on that for requirements. Relationships to other classes. There are many other classes of information that you might want to tie to. I mentioned risk earlier. Decisions, another one. Cost is another area. Requirements have a cost associated with them, and you want to track that separately. Actions, assets. So again, the physical and functional analysis side of the problem as well as mentioned at the bottom. And so lots of different relationships between these things. So as you get more and more into it, you realize, oh, I'm using more and more of the tool, not just the requirements view portion of this. And then, of course, auto-generation requirements from models. A lot of times you're saying, well, how do I get that requirement I need? Remember, we had the example of the architecture. They give us all these drawings. Well, how do I get requirements from it? In our tool, it's very easy. If you use our modeling capability, you can actually generate requirements documents directly from it. And so the real job isn't just to manage requirements. It's really to support the entire design and acquisition process through the life cycle. And that's what we've enabled this tool and given you this capability with it. The primary goal of the tool is to be your bookkeeper. And so you don't have to do that. You spend more time and energy thinking about the problem, understanding the requirements, and analyzing them and providing value to the customer by that analysis. So we're ready for the live demonstration portion. Give myself a little bit of time. That's good. Okay, so first thing you're going to come into is probably our dashboard, and you see the dashboard. And usually there's various things here to see. And I can explain it briefly, but you have a Getting Started panel. And if you're interested in requirements, so you can just click on that and come down and select Requirements Analysis Management. And here's some options for you to create a new diagram. So you can requirements document. So that's if you want to start from scratch. If you're just saying, well, I'm authoring the requirements, I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to start putting together a document. You can just build it right here. You don't have to go to Word, you don't have to go to Excel or anything else, just go start right here. Another thing that a lot of people do like is that requirements diagram from SysML. It's a nice diagram, and it's very useful if you know how to use it, and that's what you're used to working with. So that's another way to start. Another is importing an existing requirements document, which is what we're going to do in a second here. And then, of course, if you're new to the tool, we recommend using the sample problems. They help you get started, give you an example, something real, semi-realistic at least, that gives you an idea of what the tool can do and some of the capabilities within it. Also notice on here you have various accesses to documentation. So please avail yourselves of those as well. So let's go, and when you start working with the project, let me familiarize a little bit more with the dashboard. There's a recent notifications panel. So as a project is worked on by various people, and you can share your project with other people you're working with, and you can have notifications automatically sent to you. So as the owner of a project, an Innoslate project, I get those automatically, and I get them in my email, which is actually very nice. I can see who's doing what and how they're working. So it's actually a manager's dream come true. You can really see what people are doing and see what's changed in your model. Or if you're working in a collaborative environment, you can see what your other collaborators have been doing, and you can understand how to deconflict any kind of issues with them. The statistics wheel here shows you what I have in the database. Currently, I have a fair number of statements, 368 statements. 331 of those are requirements. 37 are just statements only. So the difference between a statement and a requirement that we look at in the database is the statement's a general contextual piece of information that the requirements fit under. And so they're linked together, and so the way, if you look at it in terms of classes, statement is the primary class, and the secondary class is requirement. That'll become more obvious with time. Now also notice there's also something on the outer wing. Those are actually labels. In fact, this is the label of what this is associated with. So I know now what report this came from. Have some others here as well, some actions and things. So, okay. On the right is the model maturity checker. When you run that, you get some heuristics. We're integrating that with our intelligence capability, so intelligence is also available. And I don't want to forget this panel on the bottom right is a very important panel for you. This is your direct access to the developers. You can actually make suggestions on how to improve the tool. We use those, they go directly to developers, they use those to help prioritize improvements in the tool. And we've made significant ones from users' comments. In fact, I would say from the last 5 or 6 point releases, they've all been driven by user requests. And don't be shy. We've had users request new kinds of diagrams, and we've added them. so feel free to do that. My developer is going to come shoot me after this webinar, so so you may not hear from me again, but that's what that's there for. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the tool, the top part is the menu bar. There's a variety of different options to get to different parts of it. Our new test center is part of that as well. There's a documents area here, and I'll talk about that in a minute, a little bit more depth, but this is a way you can author different kinds of documents, including concepts of operations, standard operating procedures, project plans. I use it exclusively now to develop my project plans for my customers. Some other tools that are available, the DODAF dashboard. So if you're into the DoD architecture framework, this can let you work with DODAF. And so this is a way to integrate requirements and DODAF together and architecture together, which might be interesting to a lot of you. Import Analyzer, which I'll show you in a minute, and the schema editors here as well. And then finally, intelligence. This is that new capability I just mentioned in 3.8. So, as I mentioned, you come in, you're looking at this, gosh, I want to create a new, I don't want to create a new requirements document. I really want to import an existing one. So I click on that button, and again, I could get to that through the menu as well. And so I click on that button, and it comes up with this dialog. So I have various options up here. It looks like these are tabs. Yep. And so the first one's Microsoft Word. So Microsoft Word. So this is if you're using a Microsoft Word document that's using the styling headings. I guess I'm okay for that. Sorry. So I'm got the built-in style headings here. So this is using that as a hierarchical piece of information, parent-child kind of information of the Word document. Now, most of your Word documents you're going to get probably didn't do this properly, just to warn you. So that's okay. We treat those as plain text. So I just want to give you that heads up. You can copy that information from the Word document and paste it in as plain text. Is what we recommend for that. But this also, notice, lets you bring in information from other classes. So if I have a list of functional functions that I want to bring in, I bring them into the action class. So I would select that instead. Then what it'll do is, as you hit next, it'll ask you for the next phases of information, upload and preview. So you always have a preview of ability within each one of these things. So you don't enter, the information does not get put into the database until you say yes, you accept the preview results. Okay. The next tab is if I'm importing my own XML file. So let's say someone else has done some work. They send you the export file from the tool. It's an XML file. You just drag and drop it in here, and it'll automatically put everything in the right place within your project. So that's a way to merge projects from an external file. We have the branching and forking I mentioned earlier is another way of doing that. I'll mention that a little bit more a little bit later. The next step here in the import analyzer is Excel. CSV file is a very common way. I know I worked on some very large projects where literally the entire requirements development was done in spreadsheets, in Excel files, which is okay if you have a one-dimensional small problem. When you start getting very large problems, that gets very difficult. Again, it's expecting in here, if you read down the note, it's dependent. The classes are case sensitive, information is case sensitive here. The columns must have a number or a name at least in it. If you have a column entitled class, it'll pick up the class name. Otherwise, it'll assume the default name you select up here. So again, that's up to you. So again, the information you need to have a successful import is just provided right here in these notes panels. So please use those. We also have a specific one for doors, rational doors. That's a pretty common tool that's used in the requirements world. So that's one that you could then easily take their export output, their CSV export output, and bring it into Innoslate. And then finally, the plain text. This is one where you're probably going to spend a lot of time because unfortunately, most of the documents we have are in PDF form or a textual form of some sort that isn't using, like the Word document I mentioned, doesn't have the hierarchy you need. This is a little more complex. Since it isn't pulling a name from the document itself, you need to give it a name. So this is actually used for what we call an artifact, which is a way we capture the information about the document itself, and then then everything that is related back to that document at the top level, I should say, of the requirements. You will have the ability then again to decide if it's a requirement or not, but again, most of the time you're going to use this requirements. You can prepend the number of the parent to the child number. So for example, if you have a numbering system like one of these over here on the right, these multi-level lists, and you see you have a parent number associated with them, that can get very confusing in a database. So it's important to prepend that child number. So the parent number, the child number. Very often you're going to see more like these other two on the top right here, where there's a kind of numbering scheme this way. One has a period at the end, the other does not. Again, be careful of that. The documents, since they're word processed, can be mixed in that regard. You may want to clean them up just a little bit to make it easier for the processor to work more effectively. You can also have simple lists. So again, the tool is expecting a number. So do give it a number. If there are no numbers in the document, just quickly go through a number. It's very easy to do in any of the other tools you're bringing it in from. So add that number to it. There's also a custom format available, so you can, if none of these here on the right, these multi-level lists satisfy you, you can actually create your own, and that works actually very well. But it's a non-trivial thing. Hopefully, you don't have to do that too often. Again, copy, paste, and preview. So once you've done this, it will import the document into the requirements view most of the time. Again, if you pick another class, it'll just put you into the database view. So here's the kind of result you would get from picking up a document like this. Now, it won't pick up the picture automatically, I will tell you right now, but you can add the picture in yourself very easily and fairly quickly. So this, I want to show you an example of one I did recently, in fact. Here's one, and you can see now where we have scored it. See the different parts, I guess I should explain this first, the view. So you have the ability to add a new requirement, auto number at the top here, baselining, which we'll talk about in a second, the quality checking. You can open different things, entity views, and this is how you get to your diagrams. And we have lots of diagrams to work with and play with. There's also a thing called a hierarchical comparison. This is a way you can create a comparison matrix between this and the information you want to trace to. So if, let's say I want to do a trace to an action, I could then go ahead and create that relationship between a hierarchy here within this database and a hierarchy in the actions. And that would let me then create that traceability matrix. And if those relationships already exist, they will automatically show up in the database. So again, these are different things you can look at and work with. And of course, there's all kinds of reports and basic document output, matrices, tabular output, document all your matrices you're looking for, including RVT, new and old RVTMs, and even a verification matrix. So a lot of different things to work with. Cancel that for now. But to give you an idea of that. By the way, this look you're looking at is live. So if I click on any entity within it, I can see I could type into this right now if I wanted to. I can highlight this to bold. I can insert diagrams here, hyperlinks, images, pictures. I can insert a diagram from the tool. I can insert a table, or even a horizontal rule. So a lot of the things you'd want to be able to do kind of word processing wise are here available within the tool as well. If you don't want a change, you just click the red X, but if you do want it, you can click either out of it or to the green arrow. Either way works. If I click out of it, it auto saves, and that default is automatic and intentional because we want to make sure everybody can easily not lose their data when they work. By the way, I can also here add labels. So if I want to add a label and say this is a environmental requirement, which it's probably not, then I can do that. And then here we go. It shows up here on the labels column as an environmental requirement. What else can I show you within this view? There's tons more things. This is configurable. You can go in and change the settings. And let's say I want to add clear. Is another attribute I know about. And so I started typing, and it gave me the suggestion right away. So that's what I want to do. So I'll just save the changes on that. And there it is. It's added that clear column. Now what's nice about that is that also those attributes though are available here on the sidebar as well. If you click this tab, notice clear would be on this list, but I have a column for it, so I don't need it. So it only gives you the columns of the other attributes, which we'll talk about in a minute, a little more in depth, here on the side. You also have the comments tab. So it is a place where you or a reviewer can add comments very easily and quickly. So again, that's a great way for you to interact with reviewers. We've started piloting this concept called model-based reviews. And the idea is give people access directly into the tool to be able to review documents, review information, review models, and make comments and capture those comments throughout. There's a whole set of things that go with that. By the way, you can also, with any entity, have a picture associated with it separately. That will be added into the document as well when you run a report. So those are other options available to you. Again, rationale. So what you've got here is a complete environment to work and change and adjust your requirements as you need to. You can start doing your analysis. I could break it down more. I can add a child here to make it so I can start decomposing this. So a lot of different things I can do with this information. Probably one of the first things I should have done, though, would have been baselining it, wouldn't it? So the first thing, you bring in a document and you're happy with it, before you start making changes to it, you select a baseline. So here, I want to call it just version 1. Obviously, I've used that before. So that's now going through and making sure that it's changed the history of the object so that now it's baseline. And so here is our ability. If we make another change here, I get rid of that bold I didn't want, and I remove the label. It'll change the bar over here on the left to yellow. So now I know that's what's been changed. So these are things you can do and work with to adjust and work within the requirements view. Again, to get to the quality aspects, to let it run a quality score, it's very simple. Just come up here to the Run Quality Checker, and it runs that. And, you know, it depends on the size of the document, but it's usually pretty quick. Give me a chance to get a glass of water here. So it's actually, as it's doing this, it's reading each of these description fields and looking at all those different attributes that we mentioned and determining how good a job did they do with it. While it's doing that, let's take a look at an example. So here we are with one of them, and you can see this is the entity view, and it's easy to get to. I can show you that back in a second. And so in that, the quality scores here, rationale, all this information. And you're probably wondering, how am I going to remember what's clear and complete and consistent? Well, if you notice, as I've been going down here on the right, there's a pop-up, and it has the definition for each one of those. So I know particularly when I first start, again, doing a requirements analysis job, what does clear mean again? What do I mean exactly by that? So this lets you see what those definitions are. If you add to those, make sure you add the definitions so you'll have that for you as well. Again, that's automatic within the tool. If you add an attribute here, a quality attribute, for example, then it will give you this same kind of capability with it. We actually do that for all attributes. You notice rationale, description. Okay, so you do know what's going on with all these things. So here's an example of complete. It says no, it contains multiple sentences. Obviously, it needs to be split into multiple requirements. That's what it's suggesting. If it has a comma in it or it contains the word and, it's also seeing those things. So of course, this is a very high-level policy document that was written, and it's a very high-level set of requirements. So that we're tracing to. So obviously in this one you're going to have those kind of situations. Again, that may be acceptable, may not be to you. If it's acceptable, just say yes. It's okay. I've got that. And it changes the quality score for you. Again, here are all your attributes available to you. By the way, also in this view, you have the ability to add relationships. And notice here it says decomposes parent and shows the executive summary. So this is a hyperlink to that other entity. So if I want to go to that, I just click it and it goes right over there to it and shows me all these other entities that are here. So I can work with those. By the way, the back button works too. So see, I just want to go back to where I was. I'll just do that. I can do that way. Or I could have used the hyperlink to navigate back. Again, we're getting to more of these other tabs and what's available to you for traceability and things like that. The popular tab does give you the things you probably use most. You can change this in the scheme extender. You can just decide what you want on this tab in there. So again, lots of features, lots of capabilities. Again, more than I have even time to get to all of. So let me show you another really important one, though, is history. So history is where I've made changes to something, and this shows me what I did when I created this a day ago. I actually just brought this in from another document I had already done, and so then I just went through and did a little bit of formatting, and it's tracking what I did 7 minutes ago, so you can see the time, and you have the ability to revert to those versions if you want. Again, that will include things like if you've made changes to relationships, you'll see that here as well. If you've added other information, it'll all show up here as well. Back to close. And let's see. Again, there are reports from here you can add. There are hierarchical tables. That gives you a table of the hierarchy of all the objects below it. There's nothing below this one, so that wouldn't be very interesting, but some other options as well, and some roll-up matrices as well. So just lots of different things you can work with. You can add relative relationships, so it can show what's related to each other. So now you can create that kind of matrix. So I'm tying this to what's it traced to. I could add that relationship with trace to actions. So trace to actions, for example. So that would be the relationship. I'd look for what their attributes are associated with it. So again, I can manipulate these, getting exactly what I want at any point in time. Okay, so back here. I want to show you how I got to there from here. The Open tab, that first item was Entity View. So if I click on the object I wanted, I would then go up to here and get Entity View. Oh, I'm glad that I popped up. The other more thing is the transform. So if it's a requirement, I can transform it to a statement. So I can say, no, you know what? I'm doing the analysis. This is not really a requirement. I'm going to make it a statement. It's contextual information, so I don't care. I'm just going to. Now, when you do that, you've lost your analysis here. So understand that. If it's the other way around, you look at this item and you say, well, that's really a requirement. Then I can transform it to a requirement. It'll add all the attributes, but again, you'll have to run the quality checker again to make sure you caught the quality aspects of it. So the next thing I wanted to show you was the requirements diagram. So again, let me get up here a little bit to this level. So if I want to see that, that's a SysML diagram. Sorry, open. And you go to the SysML diagram, requirements diagram, and that's this one right here. I want this one because I'm going to show you some other things from it. But as you notice on it, I've clicked on a specific requirement, and here it is over here on the left in the sidebar. You see all the different attributes associated with it. This had a lot of problems with it. One of the interesting was potential duplicate. So it's reading this information saying, this looks a lot like another requirement I have. Oh wow, that may be a problem. So if I go to the entity view of this requirement, again I can just do that from the view here. I'm clicking on that. I open entity view. Okay, and so by the way, I just put these tabs to make it easier for for you all to see, and also so I don't get too off track. Anyway, so this says, well, gosh, maybe I really have a risk here associated with that. So I'd click over here from the Popular tab to the Program Management tab, and then I'd add a risk. And I do that as easily as, here's a new risk, so duplicate requirement. And I put in the description of it, the consequence, potential error, change, that kind of thing. It does have spell checking, fortunately. You can add a probability and consequence to 50%. Make that 20. And status is open. And so again, these are attributes of that risk. So if I then submit that risk, I've just created that. I've made the relationship between it, causes. And then if I want to navigate to it, I would just click on it, and that would show me the risk. One of the nice things about this is there is a risk diagram as well, and that information shows up on there. Again, it's an interactive diagram you can work with. So if you're doing risk analysis and you just want to start thinking about risks, you can add those as well and go the other way. So if you say, well, I have a risk, let's see, is there something associated with it? So I can go both ways with that. Next thing I wanted to show you was our database view. So if we go here to the database view version of this, you normally get this view of it, which is a listed view. You can sort that by number. We default to modified because usually you're interested in the most recent thing you created in a very large database. So that's why that is there. But you also can do it by number. If you're not familiar with this view, you have the ability to change the number of items per page. So if you have a very large deck, you may want to use the 100 version of it. This is a way to, by the way, do bulk editing. So I can select a number of things and add a bulk label for it. So I'd have to add a specific label I want to do for that. So one of the other things is the table view. I don't have a table view set up here. So here's the table view for that, and I selected just the requirements for it. So over here, this is the filtering over here on the left. So you can see here where I've got that quality score, clear, consistent, design. Again, I can go on with that, more things. If I decide that, gee, this is all yeses here, I'm going to just do yes. And I want to now take and say the ones below it are yeses as well. So it's just a drag function, much like what you do in Excel. It's a smart fill to that thing. That works also with numbers and other things. So if you're using other parts of the tool where you have numerical information, it'll do that as well. You can copy and paste it. Again, it gives you a lot of that functionality which you're used to using in Excel right here in this view. So again, if you're doing multiple changes, major changes at the same time, you're trying to be more consistent in how you're dealing with something, this may be the view you want. So requirements view is one view. Here's another view called database view, which gives you more information across the board that way. Another thing, and I'm going to switch to another project here. I'm sorry I'm jumping a little bit, but I'm starting to run out of time, so I want to leave a little bit for Q&A. This is one where we've actually done some traceability and verification requirements. And so you see these are actually the verification requirements for this particular model. It's a space vehicle in this case, not a big policy document. And so now we're tying that together, and we also have labels for these that we've associated with how it's going to be verified. So through analysis in this case, you can see that it's also a verification requirement. So that's useful to us in another view we have, which we have tying to our test center. So this is our new test center capability. So now you take your actual tests and have them associated with the verification requirements associated with it as well. So I can see that a couple of different ways. Let me go back for a second here. So one of the ways for us to do that is to open the spider diagram. And in that, we can see the different aspects of it. So if we pick one of these particular, having appropriate markings is a requirement. And in case you're ever wondering, if you look on the sidebar of the spider diagram, the top item there says the word requirement. So I don't have to guess. That's where it is. And in fact, the metadata tells me that is also a verification requirement, which is going to be verified by inspection. So now that links back to where I was. So if I want to see how, obviously that's touching a lot of these different items. So as we go through this, if you want to see the test case itself, verified by, here's the test case. This is an inspection, a propellant tank inspection. Obviously the propellant tank needs to have the appropriate markings. So that's a clear one. That decomposes another test case, which is the propellant tank leak test itself. So again, that's another way to see it together. So again, here's a way you can tie two different parts of the problem together. So this gives you that traceability you're looking for between my testing and my requirements. Well, we can go on and also recognize that we have another view of documents. You can create your own document, and this is our documents view. I mentioned it earlier. You get to that through the menu. So this is a ConOps that was developed, and in it, as it's going through, this is actually one of the diagrams in the tool. So this has a link to it that you can then create and work with. And I click on it, and so here it is, change image. So I can change the title, I can change the caption. Save that. I can add a hyperlink to it, so I can hyperlink directly to the diagram within the tool. So that's another thing. Or if this is an external picture, I could hyperlink to the website where I got it from or something else. So that's another aspect of this. So we found this to be extremely useful in requirements analysis. As I'm building a requirements deck, I might have 20 or 30 requirements documents. Now here I can create a list of those requirements documents. I can hyperlink to them and give people context to why the different documents are important. So this is a way to use this within requirements management to understand what I've really got in my whole database. Another thing that we mentioned was the ability to generate requirements from a model. So here's a model that was developed. Again, I switched projects on you, so don't expect them to be the same things, because they're not. So here's the model over here. And over here on the top right, there's a little toolbar. And if you click that down, you see generate asset diagram. So I can generate the physical diagram from this, but also I can generate the functional requirements. And if I do that, I end up with this set of functional requirements. And so you already see how some of this is satisfied by, so we have some satisfied by relationships, things like that have been set up. So this lets you see the different requirements set as well. Again, it puts it right into requirements view. You see up here at the top, I'm in requirements view doing this. And I can now treat these and work with these as they are real requirements. So I can go ahead and quality check them. Just take a little bit less time since it's a little quicker. Gives me a chance to get another sip of water. And of course, it's running slow today. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of a quick view through the different aspects of the tool. I think what you'll see here is the ability to, that we have a lot of information on our website as well. Take a look at, there's pricing, there's training, and I highly recommend the training. If you're not used to using this kind of a tool, this is a very powerful tool. You know, some people are comfortable using these kind of tools. Some people it's brand new. Highly recommend everybody take a little bit of training, do the webinars, look at the different things that are online that are available. Documentation, lots of documentation options here. If you click down, you get the documentation. There's guides. Highly recommend read Innoslate 101. It's just been rewritten completely from scratch. It's a very nice document. Use different videos that are available, and feel free to sign up for things, for different topics. So again, we're happy to set up specific webinars for your group as well. So I think we're at a point where we can have for questions.
Thanks, Steve. How does my sound, does it sound okay?
Yeah, you sound much better now.
Oh, perfect. Found a new headset. Well, we've already received several questions. If you haven't had a chance to do so, use the panel on the right to ask questions, and we'll get to as many as we can today. So are you ready for your first question?
Sure.
All right. What if you were not given an initial set of requirements, but only an initial set of desired capabilities, functions, user stories, and/or use cases?
Right. So that's not an uncommon, whoops, I sure don't want to do that. I was about ready to escape out of the slideshow so I can show you rather than just talking. Oftentimes what I find myself in, I'm at the very beginning of this problem. That's what you're saying. I'm at the dashboard and say, somebody handed me this stuff that's very high level capabilities. Okay, so first thing I would do is capture those. I would capture those and call that my top level requirements document, because that's really what capabilities are meant to be. They're meant to be the top level requirements, the highest level requirements the user's looking for. Then I would take the user stories and capture them as actions principally in the tool, and that way you can start building models from those user stories. From those user stories, I go through and do the functional analysis to understand what are the functional requirements. That would then allow me to trace that back, okay, and then capture those and create that requirement specification I showed here earlier. We had a requirement spec from it. And here it is. So here's the requirement spec that we created. And then I'd go ahead and start the analysis with that. Then I can trace those back to the capabilities so people can see how they're related to one another. I think that got most of it. Anybody else?
All right, our next question is, do you use the INCOSI guide for writing requirements, and if so, how?
No, I don't. So, John, I should, but I don't. I'm bad.
Well, we use other things.
Usually, I will say, usually I'm in the position of where I'm being handed requirements and asked to do modeling. Actually, I'm in usually a worse position than that. Usually I've been asked to do an architecture study, and they tell me to do something like a $10 million flyaway cost. That was the requirement for the Global Hawk. That's usually where I start.
All right, well, we have another question from John. Do you map requirements to functions to elements to one-to-one-to-one? If not, what do you do?
Again, it depends. Usually, yes, that's where at the leaf level, that's where I want to be. I'd like to have that one-to-one capability. Oftentimes, I find myself still in reality having groups of things, just depending on what's going on. It's really, that's part of the, I guess, the engineering judgment you've got to put to it and decide when to do which.
Our next question is, do you have any browser recommendations?
Well, we like Chrome. but we understand that that's hard some places. Firefox works very well too, probably my second favorite. I use Safari here on my Macintosh every now and then. Since I don't have Internet Explorer, I don't recommend it, but it does work with Internet Explorer just fine.
All right, we have another question. It's a little long, so here we go. As a program manager, what features of Innoslate could I use to monitor leading indicators relative to requirements?
Okay. So, you know, just watching the requirement itself is very valuable. You can subscribe to a specific requirement or set of requirements and be notified about those when they're being changed. Another thing to do is run the history report. You can run the history on any entity or set of entities, and that's a good way to see what's been changing and how it's been changed. Another is to look at the quality scores and see how they're changing over time. You can see that. You can also get it through the model maturity checker and intelligence. So there's about 3 or 4 ways, 5 ways you can do it.
All right, our last question is, I have a rambling wish list narrative from a customer and a PDF that I have imported. I have started decomposing it into a Word file of requirements that I also want to import. The PDF import needs to be edited because it did not import perfectly. Then I need to link all my Word requirement statements to the PDF to give the traceability back to what the customer wished. I also need to output a traceability matrix. How do the PDF editing, traceability, and matrix output?
So first of all, get out a PDF as quick as you can and put it into the requirements view of the tool. And then you can start building the rest of those things you need. The traceability, all the other aspects of it can be done right there. In fact, the traceability matrix is one of the options for the tool, the different types of matrices, so you can do all those things. But yeah, get out a PDF as quick as you can.
Well, that's all the questions that we have so far. Oh, I'm sorry, there is another question. Is there a timeline for the release of version 3.8?
3.8 is out on the cloud. The enterprise version should be available within a few weeks, we think. And we'll be uploading that to the major sites like NSERC and some of the other enterprise locations.
Well, that's all the questions that we have. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you have any other questions, of course, please just let us know and we can help you after this webinar. We would like to thank you again, though, for joining us for today's webinar. As a reminder, we will be following up with you very soon to send you a link to the recording and the presentation slide deck. Make sure to check out help.innoslate.com for any updates on our next webinars. We also encourage you to visit our website and our blog, as well as connect with us on social media. That concludes today's presentation. Please enjoy the rest of your day.